Fantasy Football Show.
Hello everybody, welcome to the People's Poll, the show each and every Monday where James and I discuss a topic of your choosing. This is Planet FPL, I'm Suj.
And my name is James.
Yep. Monday morning, back again.
You look smart today. It just dawned on me.
Just, raising the game.
Oh, right, okay. People are going to appreciate that in their ears, aren't they?
Yeah. No, go on. So we have a People's Poll. We put 4 choices out there. Tell everybody what won.
The options were children have been banned from heading the ball in training, aged under 12. I thought it might be an interesting conversation, perhaps our memories of it, what we think as fathers now about that. Didn't pick up too many votes. It was a very interesting situation in Germany at the weekend in the game between Hoffenheim and Bayern Munich, where the game was halted on a couple of occasions because of a banner shown and aimed at the Hoffenheim owner from Bayern Munich fans. It's been mass condemned even by Bayern Munich. No hiding behind, it wasn't us. They've condemned them, mate. Yeah. The game basically got played out as a kickabout for 13 minutes at the end between both teams. Not even just sitting on the ball, just passing it to each other.
Yeah.
And it comes about because of Hoffenheim's ownership not being fan ownership. And I thought there was a wider debate about that. I wanted to, and this will go back into a poll, if not next week, the week after, because FPL Devotee came up with a very good idea that whatever comes second should probably go back into a vote. And I don't mind that as an idea. I believe 4-4-2 is making a comeback. Mm-hmm. I think football goes through cycles of different systems, be it sweeper, diamonds, 4-4-1-1, 4-3-3. Exactly. And I feel like at the top level, 4-4-2 is slowly making a comeback, and I wanted to detail why I think that's happening. There are exponents for good news, Atletico Madrid. There are exponents for bad news, Tottenham against Leipzig the other week. But I think it is beginning to make a comeback.
It's funny because when I saw the West Ham lineup on Saturday, I thought we were going to play a 4-5-1. Antonio left, Fornals in the middle, Bowen on the right, and Haller up top on his own, and it ended up straight up 4-4-2, which I was really surprised by. I bet no doubt we'll talk about some 4-4-2s in the roundup of the games in the main podcast.
There was another team that went to a 4-4-2, changed the tactics at the weekend, which was interesting. So I think we might cover off some of the teams tonight who are playing 4-4-2. The winner of the people's vote, quite clearly, was the potential impact of the coronavirus on football.
Yes.
So just tell everybody what this is.
It's basically just flu, isn't it, mate?
Well, actually,
it's a strain of.
Well, that's first question, right?
So there's so many things to talk about from a coronavirus point of view, and then not least the football impact of it. So yeah, thinking about coronavirus. So driving to the match on Saturday with my brother.
With a mask on your face.
I hope he's listening to the show, and if he's not, I'm going to tweet him. And he says to me, "It's all man-made, you know." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "The coronavirus is a man-made virus that's been put out there because the stock markets, etc., were all overhyped, and they needed to crash all of the markets, which they have. You've seen like 10 to 20% drops in the stock market, which is huge over like a week to 10-day period." And they needed some news story or something to detract away from that happening, or an excuse to make it happen. Because, these markets are all manipulated at the highest level. And he reckons coronavirus is that. Now, whether or not that's true, you can reach out to him. He's not on Twitter, so you can't. But there you go. There's a lot of people that do think
people have died.
That's
we should
going
be quite careful.
Now, obviously, we've got to the stage. Started out in China, didn't it? They say it was a bat. Something to do. It came from bats. CN19. This virus, and it's not good. It's not good. 80-something thousand at the time of recording. I mean, by the time you listen, if it's Wednesday or Thursday, it could be over 100,000 diagnosed cases globally. And we are fast approaching 3,000 people dead off the back of it. I think it's at 2,900 or something now. So by the end of this week, it will cross 3,500, 4,000 people will be dead.
To play devil's advocate here a little bit, there are, 7 billion people in the world?
Yep.
3,000 deaths is not, it's obviously terrible. It's not a huge number in terms of scale. Is this not just the flu?
Well, if you listen to Donald Trump and what he's putting out there, he's like, look, 25 to 30,000 people a year die of the common cold and what have you. Yes, but we have treatments and stuff for the common cold. There's no vaccine yet for coronavirus. They're still working on it. Trump crazily in his press conference last week was like, it's imminent. We're nearly there. Then the people from the medical authorities are like, nah, man, it's like 7 to 9 months before we're going to be testing on humans, let alone anything else. So there's no antidote or vaccine for it right now. The scale and speed at which it's spreading is the issue. So Italy went from like 30 to 40 cases 1 week to 250, 300 the week after, to 650, 700 the week after, to over 1,000. It's the scale and speed at which it can be spread is the concerning thing for me in certain places. And then the lack of preparedness. So there was a press conference on the weekend in the States, and the States' approach to it is probably worse than as in the UK. But I think in South Korea, and obviously Asia's been more acutely affected because it started in China. No other reason than that. They've tested 50,000 people. They tested 500 in America. So they're like, yo, we've got 25 cases. So the UK and the USA are all around that 25 kind of cases number. Germany around that 25 to 30 cases number. But we've not tested like that many people. America tested 500 people. In South Korea, they tested like 50,000. It's complete disparity. So you obviously, if we test more people, there's going to be more people that are sick. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Are we not just lazy asses though? We'd be like, nah, don't test me. I've got to go to work.
Well, do we even have enough kits to test people? This is the problem. So now the thing with coronavirus is where we talk about the deaths and what have you, if you look at the stats and the data, it's no different to the normal common cold in that the older you are, the disproportionate your risk increases. So someone who's 60 is way more than double the likelihood of death than someone who's 30. It's a massive curve like
I
that.
heard that if it becomes like a kind of a pandemic and there's panic, that they want to hire in retired doctors. Are they not going to be like in trouble
even more at risk
like...
potentially? But then at that point, the vaccine might be available. It's spreading fast, and there's a lot of uncertainty around it right now. There are a lot of questions. So it's affected the stock markets and affected businesses, right? Muggins here. I'm going on holiday 4 weeks on Thursday. So 4 weeks and 3 days away. I don't even know what's going on right now. Right now, I'm going on holiday. There's no travel advice not to. I'm going to 3 of my days of holiday in Abu Dhabi. I'm staying at the W Hotel in Abu Dhabi. Very nice hotel. I shouldn't complain about the fact that I'm going there, apart from the fact that last week, Thursday, it's been put on lockdown for 2 weeks. No one in, no one out. So the Crown Plaza and the W Hotel where I'm going is on lockdown right now. 2 weeks. If you're a guest in that hotel, no one in, no one out. What are you going to do? It's like they could lock me in. It's quite a nice hotel. So lock me in for 2 weeks. I don't mind, mate, as long as you're paying for my food and drink. So I don't know what's happening with that. But the Foreign and Commonwealth Office have not issued any no-fly or travel advice yet right now. So travel is going on as per usual. But all around the world now, we're seeing people reacting to it and putting in different measures that we haven't seen yet in the UK. But at some point we will. So a very, very good friend of mine I was speaking to on Sunday morning, he was due to fly out to Frankfurt this weekend coming for a trade show. I don't know if Frankfurt's got the biggest, it's like bigger than an EC, Birmingham EC trade show. And he's in the lighting and electrical game. 200,000 people a year go to this lighting and electrical conference. Cancelled. They've just shut down the whole thing. In France now, there is a ban on gatherings of more than 5,000 people, indoor gatherings of more than 5,000 people. Not allowed to happen anymore. Italy, we've seen the games that were supposed to be behind closed doors and then ultimately postponed now. So everywhere you look, like Iran is getting hit particularly bad. And anybody that listens will know that I've got no love for America, but straight away, the first thing they did, put a travel ban on Iran. You're telling me, I don't care who you are, you're telling me that they're not targeting them for no reason. I'm like, there's 5 times as many cases in Italy, for Christ's sake. You're not going to ban people from Italy. Anyway.
It shouldn't be funny, but it is.
So now it has got, I think the last count that I saw was it's in 67 different countries. And
only Antarctica's the only continent surviving.
Not to have it. Yeah. So you've got like pockets everywhere. The danger is the explosion right now. We're all at that early stage that Italy was. Like if we jump from 25 cases to 200 to 500, then the government are going to have to start doing stuff. Rightly or wrongly, I couldn't tell you, but they are going to have to start doing stuff. And now we've seen cases and deaths as a result of people that haven't travelled. And that's when it gets a little bit serious. From a medical point of view, like, is it any worse than the common cold? It must be.
But is it? I don't know. Is there anything behind Trump's comments? Because when you look at the flu numbers, I think the rate of potential death from coronavirus seems to be slightly higher from flu. But he was stunned at the amount of people that die from flu, right? Which is monstrous.
I mean, the issue with this kind of level of reporting is the amount of cases or symptoms that go unreported. So if you get a little sniffle, you're not going to report it, are you? So there could be people who have had low-level symptoms and it's gone. Younger, fitter people and women, apparently male, they haven't got enough evidence, but males are more prone to death from coronavirus than females. We're fucked.
Although if you're pregnant, you're in big trouble.
You're in trouble anyway. So if you get low-level symptoms and you don't report it, then they don't have accurate data at that point. So it's tricky. It is very tricky. But in confined spaces, it seems like it's spreading pretty badly. And I'm also a certain believer in what my brother's saying around scaremongering and that kind of thing taking place. I'm
interested on what you said about France's measures at the moment.
Yeah.
Where indoor
gatherings of 5,000 people or more.
So in other words, don't close the roof and you're all right.
Well, this is it. It's an enclosed space as a football stadium.
Yeah.
It's an enclosed space, and I don't know what it's like at Spurs, but there's a lot of old boys at West Ham who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, loads and loads. So it's a high risk.
Because let's be clear here about a football stadium, and this is where I think we start bringing a risk into football. Yeah, okay, when the game's going on, everybody's outside. What about the concourses? And that's certain football stadiums. I mean, if you talk about confined spaces, there can't be many more confined than Spurs is quite spacious now, but confined spaces than a concourse at a football stadium.
Yeah.
If you think, I mean, certain away grounds in this country, it can get pretty tight and cramped. I mean, Watford is one that springs to mind. It's like, there's nowhere to go, mate.
Yep.
On the concourse. The concourse that's why at Watford, behind the goal, they don't fill the whole, they have a big, even if they give you the whole end at Watford, say in the cup, they still leave the partition, what do you call it, the line in
Gangway.
No, that goes across the seats. What do you call it?
Tarpaulin type thing.
If you say so. They still leave that up because basically the stand can't hold the amount of people that should be in it because the concourse is so tight.
Understand.
So where does that counter outdoor space?
Exactly.
I'm not
sure
outdoors?
The definition on that. Now, Italy, obviously, they postpone games, but they've been hit particularly hard. I'm not sure why Italy's been hit particularly hard. More people travelling to Asia from Italy for some reason or other.
I suppose it's just one or two people, and then it spreads from there, right? I guess. I don't know. So there's a lot of major places in Italy at the moment are essentially already in lockdown. Mm-hmm. We've seen, most of you will have probably heard, there were 5 games that were due to be played behind closed doors in Serie A at the weekend. Serie A took a decision on Saturday morning to postpone all of those games. I presume from threat from players of travel or whatever. There wasn't they just decided just to cancel all them games, basically. Mm-hmm. And you're now in a position where, and this is again where the effect on football comes in terms of, and we might bring this into the Premier League, is Inter Milan are now in a position where, because they're still in the Europa League as well, backlog of fixtures is already brutal.
Yeah.
Like another postponement. They've already moved the Italian Cup final back a week. We ain't going to do things like that here.
No.
They're already in a position
Well, we may
where...
have no choice.
Yeah, but then, I mean, you've got the European Championships as
Yeah.
well. So it's not like...
But
If it was a free summer, you could potentially even go, right, let's postpone
the Euros.
for a month. or call off the Euros.
I mean, look, the issue here is travel, right? From country to country and airports and what have you. There's going to be a hell of a lot of that going on with the Euros, and there's a chance that airlines might ground flights if it got particularly bad.
Yeah.
Actually, to be honest with you, part of me, the only way I get my money back on my holiday is if the airline ground flights or the government say no travel. I quite want them to say that right now. But if they did that, you ain't going to no Euros overseas.
I know. Well, one of the things about the Euros, I want to talk about Asian effects briefly, but one of the things about the Euros is, could they have picked a worst year to be taking it all around the continent? Oh my gosh. I'd love to see, and we got a load of Welsh listeners and quite a few who travel and watch Wales. I'd love to see how they're getting a train to Baku for their group games in Azerbaijan if there's no flights. Like, what the... Yeah. So it has to be called into effect. Just briefly on Asia, because it's obviously so affected at the moment. Chinese Super League, I think we all know, there's a lot of wealthy clubs out there, etc.
Yeah.
That league hasn't started yet, and the suggestion is at the moment that it just probably won't.
When's it due to start?
I think it may have even been the weekend gone or something,
Right, okay,
possibly.
so it just, in the last couple of weeks.
The K-League and J-League are massively affected. The Asian Champions League fixtures due to be this midweek. I think all but 2 have already been postponed. And one of the problems we've now got with modern football is obviously travel. We've seen in obviously the Chinese Super League in Formula One was postponed. I think naturally they're talking about other races there, even as far away as Australia potentially being called off. We've seen Ireland and Italy postponed in the Rugby Six Nations because I just think the Irish just didn't want the Italians coming over. Basically, I don't really know. How close are we to football? Because one of the suggestions I've seen in the last 24 hours is, if there is a cancellation of sporting effects, particularly perhaps government enforced from our side, that we're looking at potentially a 2-month period of they say, right, there's nothing for 2 months. There's no activity. There's no concerts. There's no sporting events. There's nothing. 2 months. That's the timeline I've heard potentially put on this.
Yeah, I don't see why games couldn't, in my opinion, I don't see why games couldn't take place behind closed doors. Which would be horrendous, but I mean, okay, if they had to shut down the London Stadium to I'd miss maybe 3 games, what happens? Do I get my money back?
You'd have to.
Part of my season ticket?
Yeah, of course you would, Jack.
And then the clubs are going to be screwed
mind you,
for
with
revenue.
with your owners, who knows?
Well, they'll be screwed for revenue, right? All of a sudden, they're going to be doling out a few.
Can you imagine
£1 million?
Levy? I've told you already what he makes in like food and drink sales on a match day.
So it's going to be very, very difficult. This is going to affect the economy in some ways. So this could be a big financial decision to be made here. I think we are close.
You think it's stronger than me, I think.
I think if we get to over 150 cases in the UK, 200 cases in the UK, I think they're going to start looking at it, because we're on an island as well, enclosed. So in one way, it's actually better because we can regulate traffic in, traffic out much easier than land-based countries can. But I think we are not far off. From what we've seen in other countries, I think we are not far off.
I think one of the things that can potentially have an impact to sporting events as well is, there is a suggestion, I don't know if it's true, you might be able to shed some light, that containment is working.
Yeah, quarantining and containment is working, but they're trying to, it's the source tracking that's a bit tricky at the moment. So one person gets it, then they're like, right, give us a list of everybody you've spoken to in the last 2 weeks so we can try and trace and find, and that's not being particularly effective. So the guy that got it in the UK, in Surrey, they haven't been able to track back to where he got it from. And in Italy as well, what they call person zero, who's the first one that's started this chain, they haven't been able to track it back to. I don't know. I think we're not far off. Honestly, I don't think we're far off. Shutdown.
Okay, on football for a minute, what's the potential impact? Because you're saying genuine seriously, we could be at a shutdown prospect. So I've suggested that the government might put in a time span of 2 months. Now, if it's 2 months, where is our football season? And I realise in the scale of people's lives, etc., as Gianni Infantino said, look, if football has to be cancelled or if games has to be played behind closed doors, that's what will happen. But in terms of if we say, okay, right, 2 months, there's no travelling, whatever, no football, where does that leave Liverpool, for example?
As champions.
Because the suggestion is at the moment, could you imagine? The suggestion is at the moment that were it suddenly, right, we have to stop, there is no guarantee that the season would restart and there's no guarantee that they would be champions.
Yeah, I think
essentially this is the only thing that can stop them other than Watford becoming champions.
Based on the points gap and the number of games already played, you have to give them the title, in my opinion.
All right, who gets relegated?
Whoever's in the bottom 3 right now.
You can't do that.
Yeah, we can.
You can't do that.
After this weekend, yeah, we can.
I mean, as a Spurs fan, I'm like, yeah, wipe the season. Let's just come back in August. I'm all right with that.
I don't think we'll get to that. I think they'll play games behind closed doors. That'll be the solution to it. Which will be weird. I've never really kind of...
That's awful.
Yeah, but I think with it's only 10 games to go until the end of the season. What I would rather is they scrapped all European competition for the rest of the season, bin the Europa League, bin the Champions League, and give everybody the breathing room to finish their domestic competitions, and then we start again next season.
I think that's a great shout. Obviously, UEFA ain't going to do that. But if you take the Champions League, for example, let's say we can get to the end of March, for example. The Champions League, if you get to a last 8, in theory, could be completed in a week. You could take it anywhere. Just take the 8 teams there and have one ties. Quarterfinal, semi. No, but like the finals of a European Championship, World Cup, etc. It wouldn't be ideal, but at least you could get a winner then. Yeah. Say, okay, I don't know, the final's due to be in Istanbul, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know what the cases are, but I don't know, anywhere, and say, okay, yeah, Fenerbahce, Besiktas, they've got decent grounds as well, Galatasaray, and say, okay, you're going to have it there, 4 stadiums, quarterfinals, semi-finals, final, 1 week. In theory, you could do that in August.
Yeah.
To keep a winner for that competition, for example. Now, the Premier League and the domestic competition, all that's a lot more difficult. There's a lot more games to go. It doesn't feel like there's less in the Champions League, but suddenly if you make it 1 legs, for example, what I'm saying is I think that will get a completion. So for Man City thinking, I've got no Champions League, I think that's kind of a worst case scenario. Could it be completed in a week, even in August, if it came to it? Say, yep, that's when we'll complete it. You cannot carry 10 Premier League games into August, for example.
No.
You could carry it into June or July if the European Championships is scrapped.
Yeah, but look, there are other solutions as well. You won't like this one, but what happens to UK domestic rugby whilst the Six Nations is going on?
What do you mean?
So the teams like Saracens, Bath, Leicester, what happens to them whilst the Six Nations is going on? They just have to play without their international players. Tough shit, deal with it.
Okay, yeah.
So you could carry the season on whilst the Euros are going on, and it's like, well, you've got to deal with it. If you're losing international players, tough shit. But that's what happens in the Six Nations. The domestic competitions carry on, and the teams just play without their international players.
Yeah.
It's another solution.
That's an option. I'm suddenly thinking about Spurs squad and thinking, there ain't too many internationals left in there.
No, but then you think all of the is there any South American or what have you international tournament this summer?
I would have thought so. I don't factually know the answer to that, but it would make sense.
Because then players, if you've got a bunch of Brazilians, you're quids
Liverpool,
in,
right? And we know the Africans ain't till next year. So yeah. Liverpool, right, with Mane and Salah.
So, you know what I mean? So it's an interesting one. It's an interesting one. There will be solutions. I just think that right now we've got another week and a half of things actually figuring themselves out.
You really think this could go, don't you?
Yeah, I think it could.
I'm inclined to take the football perspective, and I think a lot of people will be like, there'll be a lot of people like you and a lot of people like me who I'm very much of it'll be all right. That's my view on it. It'll be all right.
If it goes above 200-300 cases like it did in Italy, then I think the government will be like, okay, we've got to start.
So why have Italy not gone? Because the Inter director has obviously had a massive blow up because they're now in a big problem where, they're now, obviously they've got games in hand, but they're like 8 points behind Lazio. They're like sporting integrity. It's not fair. They get very conscious in Italy about people having games in hand and stuff like that. We're not so bothered about that kind of thing. Look, 38 games each, right?
Yeah.
Play them when you play them. The guy in Italy is like, I've got to look after the league. Now, the league aren't saying we've got a massive problem here. The league are just, the games have got postponed at the weekend. They've already given them a new date. They've moved them all to, Ben Crellin won't get a job in Italy, mate.
Yeah.
All the games have been moved to May the 13th or something, I think it is. So they've gone, bang, done. All 5 of you games, that's where you're going. But talking to Ben Crellin, imagine what happens if we do have to call this off. Hey, that's a different spreadsheet, isn't it?
Yeah, tell me about it. Look, we're not going to get to a solution yet, but we are going to be keeping a very, very close eye on it this season as it unfolds. I think it's unprecedented in the seriousness of it. But yeah, there are solutions. I just think we need to bide our time and wait and see what happens. And touch wood, nothing happens and we're all healthy and safe and all the football carries on as per normal. I've only got 3 games left at West Ham this season anyway because I'm missing all of the April games. So between now and May, I've only got 1 game, which is the Wolves game on a Sunday.
Listen, as much as I'm like, yeah, it'll be all right, I am totally down with calling the season off. I'm totally down.
And if you want to know more about that, you have to tune into Tottenham tomorrow. James, why don't you tell everybody what we've got left coming up this week?
I shall. Just before we do, is there any advice we can give the listeners on a serious? Because one of the suggestions I heard yesterday,
medical trained professional.
Here's one.
Wash your hands.
Who's the secretary guy that was on? He was giving loads of advice out yesterday morning.
Well, the health secretary.
Yeah, he apparently came across quite well. I've not seen it, but one of his suggestions was in terms of time for washing your hands, you should sing "Happy Birthday."
My kids have been saying that to me all weekend. You sing "Happy Birthday" once whilst you wash your hands, and that's the right amount of time to wash your hands.
Do you not think you just start rushing it? Happy birthday to you. Yeah, keep yourselves clean. Wash your hands a lot.
Yeah.
Don't go to outdoor spaces.
Yeah.
We'll be okay. Coming up, main podcast later, Tottenham tomorrow. Perhaps not a Tottenham rant as such. Suj is feeling quite positive this morning following West Ham's victory in a 4-4-2 formation against Southampton at the weekend. Wednesday will be Sky, which I think will be particularly interesting because by Wednesday we're going to have sort of 4 of the FA Cup ties done. So we'll have a clearer indication of where we stand for planning for that. Thursday's Clash of the Correspondents is Adam and Chris at 352 FI Addict Arsenal versus West Ham, which might be, who knows, ahead of an Arsenal double game week. Just on that briefly, no announcement yet. I anticipate one still today. If there isn't one in the next, from time of recording, which is Monday morning, 30 hours or so, there won't be one.
Mm-hmm.
And Friday, final plan, which I think will be important this week because we really shouldn't be making transfers now while we're getting this picture for 31. And I think on Friday, possibly through looking at our North-South teams, our differential teams, we might be able to use some guidance where you can pick up your own information in terms of your chip planning. So that's going to be a more important podcast on Friday than normal.
Cool. Guys, do leave comments on the YouTube video or on Twitter or wherever you do find the podcast on what you think will happen and could happen. If any of you are medically trained, then you know a little bit more sound, sane, scientific advice than perhaps what James and I are offering. Because we are interested in what is going on. Hope you enjoyed the People's Poll this morning and have a great week. Ciao for now.
Cue music, man, child.
The Fantasy Football Show.